As I think back about all that I've learned in woodworking, I can't help but remember my early days. In this video, I'll be recreating those times. I set out to design and build a coffee table using only basic techniques and tools that you might find at a home center. I came home from the blue store with a bundle of pine boards. Once I had my plan organized, I measured out all of my parts. The 2x6s for the top were cut first with a miter saw. With the same setup, I cut every piece for the frame of the table. I put in a stop block to make repeat cuts on a poplar 1x2. The upper rails received a 1/4 inch groove with an up spiral router bit. We'll come back to that later. I set up the bandsaw to take out 1/4 inch rabbets from my poplar blocks. Using a small sled, I cut the rabbet shoulders as well. I used the drill press to make holes in all of the poplar blocks. There it is, all 42 pieces needed, pre-cut and prepped. Using a biscuit joiner, I put a series of slots in all of the top boards for alignment. I went back over the edges of the top boards with a roundover bit. The edges are just too uneven straight from the store. With the top boards all slotted, I applied glue to all of the edges. Followed with the biscuits. There are 6 per joint. So these panel clamps may not quite be a common tool, but they sure are handy. And finally some F-clamps for additional pressure. Keep in mind that these boards were not edge jointed. So there's the top, all glued up and clamped. I started by drilling all of my holes in the uprights with the correct bit set up. Those screws are easily concealed. With the uprights complete, I clamped on the rails. Using a piece of painter's tape as a depth stop, I drilled out the holes for the screws on the inside of the frame. I also used a countersink on the holes. And then I screwed all of the parts together. I finished up the final tightening with the screwdriver to make sure I didn't split the wood. Next, I clamped on the cross rails. I used the same technique of drilling, countersinking, and screwing on these rails. Since the frame was structurally complete, I laid down all of the boards for the bottom shelf. Notice these were all pre-drilled. Once again, I finished 3 screws with the hand driver. I slopped on some wood putty to all of the holes on the entire frame. While that was drying, I started sanding the top, working up through the grits. I followed with some hand sanding on the grooves in the edges. And there's the woodworking part of this project completed. A water-based dye will be used, so I had to raise the grain first. I'm told that distilled water is best, but I usually don't use it. Here you can see the little fuzzy raised grains after they dry. Scuff sanding is pretty much required here, just give it a light pass. Next I mixed up my dye solution. Sorry about the sun washout. I picked up this little sprayer at the Orange Home Center. It's not great, but it does get the job done. Using a single rattle can of spray-on polyurethane, I gave the top several coats of finish. You may wonder why I'm spraying over the wood that I just finished spraying with the dye. Simply put, I want the distress marks to show up better. I'm normally opposed to the trend of distressing furniture intentionally, but here I am doing it. The edges are where the paint can be most easily worked away. When I was done, I placed the frame on the top upside down on my bench. From there, I was able to get the two assemblies aligned. To attach the tabletop, I used the poplar blocks in the rail grooves. Just mark the holes with an awl, drill the pilot holes, and screw them in. With the table completed, I dragged it inside on a drop cloth. So there it is, a table built with basic skills and mostly just home center tools. I hope you enjoyed the show.